Business, like anything else involving people, can get stale and stagnant, especially if you aren't intentional about keeping things going. Now, one of the ways that I like to do this is by following the biblical seasons. And I know that sounds strange, like business and biblical seasons, but stay with me because I think you're going to like where this is going. So you can take these biblical seasons and you can apply them to pretty much every area of life, but especially to business. Now, King Solomon, richest man who ever lived, most successful entrepreneur who ever lived, so to speak, said there is nothing new under the sun. And what he meant by that was that human nature, and by extension, the things that happen in the world, repeat themselves because although the names change, the nature of people remains the same. Now, that being said, it is important for all of us as business owners and entrepreneurs to take time regularly to assess what we are doing and take actions intentionally to prevent stagnation from getting stuck in a rut. Now, there may be people watching this right now and you feel like you're in business and you're stuck in a rut. You're living the same 6 months over and over again, right? Now, of course, business is just one aspect of life, and the principles we'll discuss today can be applied to pretty much every area of life, or at least a wide variety of different areas of life, like marriage and parenting, politics, friendships, etc., right? It's important not to let any of those things stagnate and to be intentional about all of them. And so I want to introduce you to the month of Elul. That's E-L-U-L, Elul, and the season of Teshuva. Now, you may have never heard of Elul, or maybe you're like, oh, Elul, I love Elul. So it just, depending on where you're at, I want to give you just some background on what is Elul and why is it relevant to this topic. Now, Elul is, depending on how you're calculating, either the 6th month of the year. It's the 6th month of what we would call the biblical year, but it is the 12th month of the Hebrew civil calendar. And it is the month right before the famous, you may have called it a Jewish holiday, but it's a biblical holiday called Rosh Hashanah, or the Feast of Trumpets. And so some people also call it the Jewish New Year. And so in kind of rabbinical thought or Jewish thought or biblical thought, you could say, it is a season of preparation, right? The month before the new year begins is a time to reflect on the previous year and, point towards the next year. And so the season of Teshuvah itself is actually the 30 days of Elul and the first 10 days of the following month, Tishri, which begins what we would call the high holidays or the biblical holidays. And you can find a reference to those in Leviticus 23. So Elul being 30 days, and then leading up to Rosh Hashanah, it ends on Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement. Again, the big high holiday in the Hebrew year, a commemoration of God's love and mercy and his forgiveness, and a time for self-examination and repentance and forgiveness and renewal. There's also this idea during the month of Elul that the king is in the field, right? It's a famous parable that's told during the month of Elul where God, like a king, right, he leaves the palace and walks around to see the people. Now, I think of this more in the terms of thinking of a king, like you've heard in the story of David and Bathsheba, the reason he was in trouble, because during the summer months, he wasn't out at battle with his troops. He was at home with nothing to do and ended up getting himself in trouble because he wasn't doing what he was supposed to do and he wasn't where he was supposed to be. And so we all can do that. And there's probably a whole nother thing we could do on the summer months as it pertains to business and life and things like that. But that being said, when a king is doing what he's supposed to do, he's traveling back home during the month of Elul, and it's as if he's right there in the field with the common folks. And so if you were inclined, you could just walk right up to the king and talk to him right there because he's right there in the field. Interesting concept, interesting thought, because normally, right, when he goes to the palace, you have to go through layers of gatekeepers and things like that in order to get an audience with the king. But if he's in the field, you just go up and talk to him. And so Teshuvah itself, the Hebrew word, means return. And it is the concept of repentance. Sound familiar for us Christians, right? But turning back to God is not just necessarily about feeling bad about something. It's about turning towards God intentionally and doing things. And so historically, it's spoken of that there are 4 main steps to Teshuvah or to return or repentance. And so the first thing is to recognize mistakes, regret the action or own the action, resolve not to repeat it, make a decision, right? And then repair the action through steps of either making amends, restoring relationships, and things like that. And so it's less about guilt and more about realignment. And so it's a cool concept for us in business because Teshuva gives us a way to reset, clear out the things that weren't working or the wrongs, right? And prepare for a new season. And so I want to kind of give you what I think is the bridge to business success from Elul and the season of Teshuva. So you can basically look at it as like a map of entrepreneurial success, that if you'll take the time during seasons of the year, right? You don't want to do this all the time. You don't want to sit in this type of a season all the time. Sometimes you want to just be executing the plan, right? But during the month of Elul, it's good to take this time for reflection, to review business, right? In Elul, we review our business, review our financials, right? Review the team that we're working with, review the vision, make sure that we are looking at these things, putting our eyes on them intentionally to examine them and reflect, right? What worked? What failed, right? What must be realigned, right? Did we stray off the path and we need to bring ourselves back in? Or are we hitting the mark in areas? And I'm sure that in every business, you're going to find that there are areas where you strayed off the mark and there's areas where you're hitting the target. So the second thing I think is a return, right? Reconnect to the vision. Teshuva means returning to God's design. And I believe that, entrepreneurs who believe in God, right? You're inspired by God to do the things that you're doing. And so in business, returning is going back to the original why, the core mission, right? Of why you do what you do and making sure that the things that you're doing based on that reflection that you're doing align with it, right? Business is not just about chasing money, right? It's about serving people, about helping others, about building a team together and going after a vision as a group, as a team. And so you want to make sure that you're not straying away from the core mission and values of your business. And so the third thing is systems and relationships. Now, Elul is about repairing, right? You reflect, see what's working, what's not working, and what's working, obviously, you just continue to do, right? But what's not working, you want to make a reparation. You want to repair it or fix whatever it is that's going on, whether that be in key relationships or other things. And so in business, you want to restore trust with your clients and vendors, or even with your employees, because integrity has compound interest. Has a compounding effect. You may not realize the business that you're not getting because of straying away from, say, your core mission and values. And it doesn't mean that you're doing something dishonest or without integrity, but it could mean that you are not sticking to the core message of your marketing or the core values or core principles of what you're doing. You may have gotten distracted with shiny object syndrome and started chasing something that's not related to the core, piece of your business. And so the last step then is renewal, which is a strategy per se, right, for growth. Teshuva positions you for renewal at this time of the year because this time of the year is all about renewal. Now, entrepreneurs should set fresh goals, right, prune distractions, and prepare, right, for the new year or the new business cycle. And so you want to take practical actions based on these things in order to get yourself realigned and strategize for business growth. So one of the things you can do is give your audience a business Teshuva checklist, right? That they can apply right away. Things like auditing your finances, customers, and your systems, right? That's part of your reflection. Step 2, you could write down your original vision and compare it to the current reality. That's part of the return piece, right? You could make plans for relational repairs, whether with your customers, your teams, your partners and vendors. And you could set, bold, clear goals, right, for the next 12 months, which would be your renewal. And so I think it's cool because as business owners and entrepreneurs, we all have so much going on all the time. And sometimes you can't see the forest through the trees. And the season of Teshuva and the month of Elul is an opportunity to step back, right? Rise above what you're looking at, kind of take a drone's eye view of your business and what you're doing and reflect and see, what am I doing well? What am I not doing well? what is our team doing well? What are they not doing well? Who's on board? Who's not on board? What customers are we serving? What customers should we not be serving? Have we been taking on things that are not, part of our core mission? And unfortunately, those things, need to be pruned. Everything is on the table, so to speak. And so, Teshuva and Elul may be predominantly a spiritual concept, right? It restores us spiritually, right? Helps us with our relationship with God. But all relationships are similar in the fact that if we don't put intentional effort into them, then we're going to stagnate, right? Kind of as we talked about it first. And so this season isn't just about turning away from mistakes, right? It's more about turning toward purpose, growth, and blessing. And I think that if you can get your mindset on pointing yourself towards a positive impact of the goal and the vision that you set out to at first, or making adjustments to it that align you with what really truly should be the goal and what God has put in your heart, then I think that this season will be a major blessing to you. I know it has been to me in the past. I know it's already a blessing to me this year, and I'm excited for the opportunities that it provides all of us, right, to reconnect, not just with God, but also with our business, with our clients, with our employees, with our vendors, and everyone that we encounter every day. And so I hope this blesses you. I hope that you are going to take the opportunity this year and this season to reflect and return and repair and renew everything around you, especially in your business. So have a wonderful one. Appreciate you guys, and we will see you on the next one.